Remember, Benny Gantz is one of the very small 5 members in the war cabinet. He and General Gadi Eisenkot have been really pushing and pushing for the top priority to be the release of the hostages. The other thing to note is that he may not have said it in that soundbite that we just heard, but General Benny Gantz, like the Prime Minister and the other senior officials that are leading this war, the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, the other generals we just mentioned, Gadi Eisenkot, all agree that if Israel goes into Rafah in the coming weeks, they will spend considerable time before that evacuating hundreds of thousands of Gazans. Now, the question is how to do that. And we're told that the Israeli army is working on a plan. It appears that the most likely scenario is that Israel will give safe passage to Gazans to move north to the northwest along the coast, and that safer zone, I won't call it a safe zone, but the safer zone, Mawasi, will be extended to the north and south. We've even heard some reports that possibly there will be some kind of barges built off the coast to house even more Gazans. There's just simply no way that we're going to see Israel go into Rafah in a very intense way, come in with tanks and troops, the way we've seen them hit other major Hamas strongholds like Gaza City and Khan Yunis, without getting out the civilians. Israel's making that very clear, though it doesn't always come across in the headlines. So, here, General Benny Gantz trying to send a message to Hamas to really move and move quickly, because Ramadan is coming. And it is really in no one's interest, not in Israel's nor the Muslim world, for there to be a war, an intense war going on in Gaza during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan.
All right, Jordana Miller for us in Jerusalem. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
In other world news, the family of Alexei Navalny is stepping up its demands today for information about his death. The Russian opposition leader died on Friday in a penal colony in the Arctic, but few details have been made public. Russian authorities say investigations are ongoing. This morning, Navalny's mother was denied access to the mortuary where his body is reportedly now being held. With more details, here's Daniel Hawkins for us in Moscow.
Authorities have been rather silent on the progress of the investigation on the location of Navalny's body. We've heard pretty much no official statements since day one. The information we're getting, though, from his associates is that his mother, Lyudmila Navalny, had visited the colony where her son passed away. That's where she received official notification of his death. But she couldn't get access to his body. Now, there was a lot of media speculation over the last 24 hours as to where the body could be, what exactly is going on. The information we're getting from his associates is that the body is with Russia's investigative committee as they carry out another autopsy to establish an official cause of death, to establish the full circumstances of his death, because the initial tests, as according to his associates, were inconclusive. Now, of course, this could take any number of weeks. We don't know how long this is going to take, but this is going to be, of course, of small comfort to his family, who are seeking answers as to what exactly happened in that penal colony and what exactly led to Alexei Navalny's death. And we are waiting for some sort of statements from the authorities, from officials, as to when that investigation will be concluded and what that cause of death was.
Well, there has been some reaction to all of this from the Kremlin today. In a statement, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, Dmitry Peskov, calling Western reaction to Navalny's death unacceptable. He told reporters in Moscow that blaming the Kremlin for what happened was vulgar, and that the investigation into his death is being carried out now in accordance with Russian law. Now, staying with this, an independent monitoring group in Russia has said that hundreds of people in more than 30 Russian cities were arrested over the weekend during ad hoc memorials to Navalny. The largest crackdown appeared to be in St. Petersburg, where around 200 people were detained by police. Those who turned out before the arrests laid flowers and candles to honour the opposition leader. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, Russian forces are claiming that its military have taken control of a vast coke and chemical plant in the ruined city of Avdiivka, this days after seizing the city itself. The takeover is one of Russia's biggest wins on the battlefield in months, and Ukrainian soldiers were reported to have been holed up in that plant. Charlotte Hughes has the report.
On Sunday, they claim to show Ukrainian soldiers under intense enemy artillery fire near Avdiivka, a town in the Donetsk region that Russian forces say they're now in complete control of. They claim they're in the process of clearing the area of the few remaining soldiers, and they're not planning on stopping there.
Our troops will continue their offensive operations in order to free the People's Republic of Donetsk, which is in the hands of nationalist Ukrainians.
On the Ukrainian side, it's these images that are being shared. Soldiers gathered around a fire in the basement of the Avdiivka coke and chemical plant. They're surrounded by shelling. Even this soldier's coffee isn't spared. A plant that Russian forces claim to have taken control of on Monday. Despite losing Avdiivka, Volodymyr Zelensky remains confident. According to the Ukrainian president, his troops can recover land abandoned by the Russians, and Vladimir Putin, quote, can still lose. On Sunday, Ukrainian authorities accused Russian forces of shooting 6 unarmed Ukrainian prisoners of war in the city and 2 others near Bakhmut. The prosecutor's office in Donetsk has opened an investigation. Russia's defense ministry has yet to respond to the allegations, but Moscow has previously denied claims that it has killed prisoners of war.
Now, tribal violence in Papua New Guinea has left dozens of people dead, according to police. The victims, they say, were shot dead during an ambush. The area in remote highland regions of Papua New Guinea has long struggled with violence, but these killings are believed to be the worst in years. As Gregory Pless reports now from Sydney.
So far, the police and local authorities have delivered only very limited information. As you mentioned, we know that a group of men were ambushed by rival tribesmen, and that those people who were gunned down were themselves on their way to fight with this rival clan. What you need to know about this particular region of Papua New Guinea, the Highland province, is that it's quite rich in resources. It has one of the biggest gold mines in the country, but a very small minority of the local population actually benefits from this exploitation. And that's in this context that over the last 2 years in particular, conflicts between local tribes have really intensified over land use, over resources, but also most of them are entangled in endless vendettas, revenge killings. To give you an example, just last September, some tribesmen who were accused by another tribe of killing one of their own, went to the funeral of that dead man armed with machetes and what they call their bush knives and killed 5 other people. And the worst in all this is that this kind of attack is probably the least of the local authorities' concerns because, as you mentioned, there's been a proliferation of guns and assault rifles in the last few years. Their origin is quite unclear, but obviously it makes those confrontations even more deadly. And facing with this situation, the local authorities since last year have been trying to limit the circulation of those weapons, but haven't been very successful. Last year, they also tried to, they actually imposed a lockdown for several months, but as these recent attacks just show, they've been unable to really contain this explosion of violence.
And that update from Gregory Pless brings us to the end of the programme. Thanks for watching.
Today on Arts 24,
These songs of freedom is all
a film about an icon. British actor Kingsley Ben-Adir takes on a legend.
When you write that?
All my life.
And before the film, what did Bob Marley mean to you?
He was an idea, and he was his music.
Music is all about music. Unity of the world.
And we hear from filmmaker Ronaldo Marcus Green.
Unity, love, peace, that's what draws us to him.
Bob Marley One Love has so far premiered in Paris.
Let's join together and feel all right. Every night we'll be together.
Les images, le paysage. Franchement, j'ai failli pleurer.
The film has also been presented in Bob Marley's home of Jamaica.
And a superstar.
Playing this role is a huge responsibility, and the whole family, the whole Marley family, were involved. What was that like?
Really nice. Really, really special. So much of the process was with them. I spent time with Stephen at his house and Rowan and Bob's friends who knew him when he was 13 in Trenchtown, Lego. I learned everything I know about Bob now through them and with them.
You can't separate the music and the message.
Every day we pay the price.
What is the message? Peace.
Tell us about the search to find the actor to play Bob Marley.
It was long. It was long, and quite honestly, I didn't think it was going to happen. We had just gotten so many tapes that were just off the mark. Really good actors, but just not right to play Bob. You know, you needed to be the right age, you needed to be the right look, and obviously you need to be somebody that can take on this legend. So it was a behemoth of a role, and lo and behold, I get this tape out of nowhere, and it's this guy by the name of Kingsley Ben-Adir, who I didn't know anything about. It was a special moment where I started to say, well, this is possible, this is possible. And then I got even more scared, because then I was going to have to make the movie.
Some people in Jamaica at first, though, they weren't a fan of the idea. They wanted raw Jamaican patois. How challenging was that part of the project?
Very challenging, but I thought if you found a good actor, you'd be able to create that. And I thought, okay, with refinement, with the right time, with the family, with dialect, with all of those things, he can get there with time. People are always going to say something, but a great performance is a great performance, and hopefully that's what they'll be talking about.
Well, Kingsley did a great job. It surprised everybody. Yeah. Jamaican people love him, so I think that said it all.
When I met him for the first time, I thought, this guy's going to be so committed to Bob. He's going to protect this man's legacy with all his heart. And he really did. He put his soul into this role.
What about the way he spoke then? How was it learning and speaking patois?
That's why it may as well have been French. It may as well have been French. If anything, it was probably more difficult because it's an English-based language, so there's lots of words that are English. But the whole flow of the language and the structure of the sentences, it's a foreign language. There were days where I was like, if this was in French, yeah, I'd be learning the scene in French, and then I'd have French experts around me to help me find the nuance of like the French accent, depending on where I was based in France, if it was Le Banlieue or if I was Central Paris or if I was from the country. So we had exactly the same thing with Bob. Normally you have one dialect coach, but on this movie we had a language team. So people from the Jamaican University, linguists, specialists, Jamaican dialect coaches who were alive in the 70s and remember how they spoke differently then. I have my own dialect coaches. I had Jamaican friends come to my house. It was a whole process all the way through.
Might be up for a film in French next.
I'd like to get a French agent. Yeah, I'd like to try.
Do you speak any French?
Quelques mots. But I could learn. 2 years.
Don't let them fool you.
Reggae is the people music.
And Bob Marley had a very distinct way of singing, speaking, dancing. How did you learn how to move like him?
With a lot of help, a lot of help. Many months of feeling very confused, but always from the point of view of understanding his psychology first. The way we all move comes from our experience. He's singing and dancing from such a specific place of connection to something higher than himself, almost like seance, you know. It's really a profound experience to watch him, and there's an undeniable magnetism that's unlike anything else. So understanding that was really months and months of conversations, and dancing like myself to understand how we're different.
My life is not important to me.
Are you satisfied?
My life is for people.
Do you really think this world will make it?
Yes.
Bob had this enigma about him, just a mysterious man, you know, that you see on the T-shirts, on the buttons, on the bags, and obviously you hear his music and it's amazing, but I didn't really know that much about Bob. I thought I knew, you know, he's from Jamaica and I can even recite some lines of the songs, but I really didn't know anything about Bob. But yeah, Bob represented, obviously, unity, love, peace. It was in his music. It's what draws us to him. But where he was singing from, what he was singing for, those were things that revealed themselves as I got closer to the music.
What did you learn about Bob the man, then, making the film?
You know, I think there's an assumption whenever somebody's great at something that it just kind of falls out of the sky. You know, it's just this gift. And it was, but he worked really hard. They said he didn't sleep. He just like rested his eyes. I believe it. You see it in the film. He's running his bandmates, the way he rides them. He was a perfectionist. He was militant. He was a revolutionary. He was somebody that felt that he didn't have a lot of time. So he just went into creation mode. I mean, he essentially sang the Bible in a lot of ways. He gifted us that.
I was a fan in a way, but not like you got diehard fans who know Bob's full body of work. And now I do. Now I know, you know, before Concrete Jungle, all the way to Survival and Uprising and all of the work. So I definitely didn't know as much as I do now. But he was, ever since I can remember, Bob Marley was always played Notting Hill Carnival, and he's everywhere.
The film premiered in Jamaica, and you showed the film alongside the Bob Marley family's brother Ziggy.
Yeah, I was behind Rita.
What was it like?
Really special. Just energetically, you know, like it's, I had to take a couple of steps back and just breathe and take it in, because it was, you know, their lives are on the screen, and they're just very special. It hasn't sunk in yet. I think that's what it hasn't sunk in yet. I think it's going to take a couple of years, because we're kind of still in it, you know, like bringing the film out and sharing it or handing it over in a way on Valentine's Day is going to be, you know, it's going to mark kind of the end of something and the start of something new.
You recreated some very iconic moments. What was the most memorable part of the production for you?
It felt like a World Cup match. From prep all the way through post. It had that level of intensity just because of who Bob is and what Bob means to so many people. So there was no small moment. They were all big moments. It was challenging, shooting in different countries, the biggest film that Jamaica's ever seen or had.
Your last film, King Richard, was also about a real person. Is it not an incredibly immense pressure to make a film about someone who was very important, who existed?
It is, absolutely, and especially Bob. You know, Richard Williams, unless you're a huge tennis fan, nobody really, you know, nobody knows who Richard Williams is, so we can get away with a little bit more. With Bob, everybody knows Bob. But if you just break it down, we were interested in trying to understand the man. And a lot of people, myself included, didn't know who that was.
Smile with the rising sun. Three little birds. It's by my doorstep.
Sometimes the messenger has to become the message.
I wasn't aware that Rita Marley gave him Rastafarianism or planted that seed for him. These are new details about his life. I didn't understand their relationship and their courtship. It took a little bit of the pressure off of trying to just discover who he was as a person, as a father, as a husband, as a musician. And he wasn't a perfect person. He made mistakes. But I think Ziggy said it best. Bob had a perfect purpose. I love that. His purpose in life was perfect.
Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that thing. Every little thing gonna be all right. You like that one?
Yeah. It made me think about what our father went through emotionally. Inside of him, that wasn't shown on the outside, that wasn't seen in the photos or in the interviews, but it just made me think about what he went through as a human being, you know?
Did the Marley family like the film?
They love the film, and that means a lot to me. Obviously, it's their dad, and so if they think it's cool, I think it's cool, and they're pretty cool people. I mean, Ziggy's like the coolest dude I know. He walks around, and you're just like, man, that must have been Bob, man.
So what have you taken away from Bob Marley from the film?
The feeling of what it means to dedicate your life to music and spirituality, and what it costs to dedicate yourself in the way that Bob did. Like, it wasn't for free, you know? He didn't arrive at peace and love and unity without huge struggle and without huge suffering. We throw around the term kind of artist. I'm an artist. And it's like, no, the art comes when it gets special. And Bob reached a place in his craft that many won't. And I have just an admiration for him that is unspeakable. Yeah, I kind of love him, you know?
One love, one art, one destiny.
What is Bitcoin City going to include? Well, it's going to be right there in the second Gulf, and it's going to include everything: residential areas, commercial areas, services, museums, entertainment.
I'm the first resident of this Bitcoin city in Conchagua here that we are. I think I'm the only white immigrant or, new Salvadorian or Bitcoin city resident. I told people one day a nation state will adopt Bitcoin, and they thought I was crazy, and then here it was. And I never even heard of El Salvador, but I learned about the new Bitcoin president and his plans to not only adopt Bitcoin, but develop a Bitcoin city. I believe it's gonna happen, so I'm staying. I'm not concerned. I'm watching. I'll watch everywhere else, but here it's gonna happen. I'll wait as long as it takes, as much time as needed.
A deadline to prevent a full-scale attack on Rafah. Israel says Hamas has until the start of Ramadan to release all hostages, otherwise troops will storm the Palestinian city. Coming up, an update from Jordana Miller, who's covering the story from Jerusalem. Also in this programme, questions mount over the death of Alexei Navalny. His mother denied access to his body today. Russian authorities say they are still investigating how he died. And Russian troops complete their takeover of Avdiivka in eastern Ukraine. Its soldiers sieging a huge chemical plant, the last bastion of Ukrainian resistance in the Donetsk city. Hello, you are tuned into France 24. I'm Nadia Massi with the World News. Our top story. Israel has given Hamas a deadline to release all hostages from Gaza. Benny Gantz, a member of the Israeli war cabinet, warned the Palestinian group that it has until the start of Ramadan on the 10th of March, saying if the hostages are not freed by then, Israel will invade Rafah, where the majority of the Gazan population is sheltering. Well, our senior reporter, Catherine Norris-Trent, has been speaking to the UN's humanitarian coordinator for the Middle East. He told us such a ground invasion would bring yet more chaos to Rafah.
It can't even be comprehended what that will mean. The fact is, I've got 1 million plus people who are displaced, who are living in these conditions, and there's going to, on top of that, you're going to put a military intervention. People will then just run away, try and hide, try and escape, and that's going to just create more chaos.
Is any kind of evacuation of civilians feasible, do you think?
There are very few places left for people to go to. We don't have the supplies, the contingency stocks to actually address them if they do move, and the stocks we have on the ground are probably 2 or 3 days worth. We're not even supplying the number who are there, and then to put on top of that the fact that they may move again and have new needs, which we can't address, then that would be a tragic situation.
Well, for more on the story, Jordana Miller is with us from Jerusalem now. And Jordana, the UN officials spelling out the huge suffering for the people in Rafah even before the possible ground invasion of the city. So how do you today view the likelihood that there will be a ground war there? Are Israeli leaders being swayed by the kind of international pressure we just heard there?
Well, Israeli leaders have been hearing international opposition to a potential major military operation in Rafah now for 2 weeks. So this is nothing really new. What I think is important is that the war cabinet minister there, Benny Gantz, is trying to give Hamas a way out. In other words, we won't undertake this very complicated military operation if you release our hostages, or between the lines there, he's also saying, or if you come back to us with some reasonable demands that we can get on board with and make progress with a hostage release deal and ceasefire. Remember, Benny Gantz is one of the very small 5 members in the war cabinet. He and General Gadi Eisenkot have been really pushing and pushing for the top priority to be the release of the hostages. The other thing to note is that he may not have said it in that soundbite that we just heard, but General Benny Gantz, like the Prime Minister and the other senior officials that are leading this war, the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, the other generals we just mentioned, Gadi Eisenkot, all agree that if Israel goes into Rafah in the coming weeks, they will spend considerable time before that evacuating hundreds of thousands of Gazans. Now, the question is how to do that. And we're told that the Israeli army is working on a plan. It appears